Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and boy do I have something exciting for you today, and it is a full tank review on the brand new UDES 3 Alt 3. This is a Tier 9 Swedish premium medium tank, and right off the bat, I really enjoyed this vehicle. It's very similar to the Char Future 4, which I think is one of the most enjoyable tanks in the game. This vehicle has incredible flexibility with a hydropneumatic suspension, giving it up to 13 degrees of gun depression, and to top it all off, it even has an auto loader as well. It can make you bonds, can make you credits. Is this going to be the new best premium tank inside the game? Well, that's my job to tell you today. So before we jump into the gameplay, let's see how the UDES 3.3 holds up to one of my faves, the Char Future 4, and also another 3-round auto-loading or auto-reloading premium medium tank, the Object 590. So right off the bat, the UDES 3.3 has a 105mm gun with the same damage per minute as the Char Future 4. However, not all 105mm caliber guns are equal, because this one hits for 360 compared to the Char's 390. It also has less penetration at 252, and these are APCR rounds, so they won't get full AP normalization. The real disappointing thing about this tank is the premium rounds, 284mm of pen. That's perfectly workable, but when you compare that to the Char Future 4's 330 heat, yeah, that really sucks, and it means it's going to struggle to just bludgeon its way through really thick armor, unlike the Char. So this vehicle has 3 rounds in each of its magazines, a lot like the Object 590. That's 1 less than the Char, but its intra-clip reload is a second better than the other 2 tanks in this comparison. Accordingly, the UDES 3.3 actually has a better burst than the Object 590 at 1080 in 6 seconds, way better than 960 in 8, and it will actually burst out damage faster than the Char. It will fire all 3 of its rounds in 6 seconds, whereas the Char requires double that time, 12, to fire out 4, and it's got 2/3 of the magazine damage. So this is definitely a lot quicker at pumping it out than the Char. However, you can't really go deep into that magazine and kind of clip out an entire Tier 8 medium tank like you can with the Char Future 4. The shell velocity on this tank at 1,230 is not bad, and the gold rounds get even better at 1,460, but when you consider that the Char has that with its standard rounds, yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a disadvantage of this tank. Luckily, however, this vehicle carries a good amount of ammunition, so if you can get intuition, which is a hard ask, on 2 of your loaders on this vehicle, yeah, that's only when you've got like a 7 or an 8 skill crew that I would ever recommend that. Then a quick switch out to the HE shells on this tank can actually be brutal, and then you are packing kind of like that 1,500 magazine potential, but only if you can pen with a poor 53 millimeters of high explosive penetration. So now onto the gun handling of the UDES 3.3, and this is where I was really surprised about this tank. It's actually more accurate than the Char Future 4, and because of the field mods it gets, yeah, that will get even better, as you see later on. And while the aim time isn't quite as good, this vehicle just trashes the Object 590 with regards to its gun handling. Just look at the disparity, 0.16 when moving versus 0.21 on the Char and 0.25 on the 590, and 0.06 on the turret. Literally a third of the Chars and less than half of the Object 590s. Accordingly, this vehicle, either you don't use vert stabs on it and it can perform very well even without them, or alternatively, you do take them and you've still got really good gun handling as well. This is further boosted by the vehicle's great bloom after firing of 3, which is 2/3 of the 4.5 that the Char gets and better than the Object 590. All in all, the gun handling on this tank is fantastic. And when you also look that it gets 13 degrees of gun depression, it's outrageous. However, I'd like to clarify, it only gets 7 degrees without using its hydropneumatic suspension, and the extra 6 is provided for by that hydropneumatic suspension. So that's only going to be possible if you're going at 10 kilometers an hour and less. And it also means that if you expect to get any kind of good gun depression over the side of this tank, well, you're going to be very disappointed because it's limited to 7, because of course you can only use the hydropneumatic suspension on the front of the vehicle and you can't use it over the side. Still, 13 degrees of gun depression with this kind of gun handling and having an autoloader. Oh, this thing is looking great so far. So now onto the mobility. It's not particularly wonderful news for the UDES. It's not bad, but it's not wonderful. 55 forwards and 18 backwards, worse than the Char. Its power to weight is 18. That's not very good for a medium tank. And its ground resistances are worse than the Char, but they're not horrendous. It's only really upslope that this thing feels relatively slow, and when you get it on soft terrain. So consider having off-road driving on your driver to be able to prevent that disparity. This mobility is countered by great turret traverse at 40 and great tank traverse at 50, making this thing very agile at getting around or at least re-engaging its opponents, irrelevant of where they are compared to your tank. So now onto the armor of this vehicle, and this is where everything just falls down for the UDES. It basically has no armor. This is how the armor model works out if you're getting shot by a 105mm gun. So the upper hull is decent, the top of the turret is decent, but the whole of the mantlet is an easy pen. The lower plate is trash, and the whole of the side armor, it works for side scraping against 105mm caliber guns if you can bait them into shooting your hull. But the problem is that as soon as you're fighting against something that has more than a 105mm caliber gun, let's use the WZ-120 as an example, yeah, your whole tank is just blue. And so this vehicle's a bit of a weirdo in a way. It works against 105mm that don't fire heat and lower, but if they have a 106mm caliber gun or larger and they fire AP, yeah, it's going to be horrible for you. And even if they fire heat, it's just horrendous. So I would thoroughly rather be playing a Char Future 4 in this regard. You can get up to about 200mm of effective turret armor on the Char, which is very nice against tier 7s and pulls off miracle bounces against tier 8s. Even with that 40mm of side armor and the 55 on the front, the Char is just way better within that regard at taking hits. And I wouldn't want to be taking hits from artillery in this vehicle as well. That's not going to go very well for you. Add to this relatively poor hit points of 1,600, and this thing just doesn't really have the durability to stay in the game, so it needs to use that really good gun handling and pretty good firepower to succeed on the battlefield. However, when we look at the miscellaneous stats, it's really good news here. This thing has amazing camo when it's moving, 12.88, and it also has 390 meters view range. This means that if you use a premium consumable with good crew skills, you don't really need to take coated optics on this tank at all, unlike the Char, which I always take coated optics on with its poor 380 meters view range. The only way you could get around that is if you used bond vents on the Char, something that even though I love the tank, I just can't bring myself to because it's a tier 9 reward tank and it's not a premium. However, the UDES I will be investing into because it will make me credits and it will make me bonds. So crew-wise, this vehicle has exactly the same loadout as the UDES at tier 10. That means that your commander is also performing the radio operator and a loader role, and your gunner is also providing a loader role as well. This puts quite a lot of pressure on your commander, and I would thoroughly recommend that you have a 0 skill commander at best, at least until Wargaming decide if they're going to change the crew system. So on this tank, you must have brothers, you must have camo, you must have recon, you must have situational awareness, and you must have repairs. Okay, that's already 5 skills, and that's without taking things like Eagle Eye or preventing some fires on your vehicle, or maybe even taking any of the loader skills. On your gunner, I would thoroughly recommend brothers in arms, concealment, repairs, Deadeye, and considering how much you're going to be spotting and sniping, I'd probably take designated target before snapshot on this tank because it gets such good gun handling on that turret anyway. On your driver, brothers in arms, concealment, repairs, then I'll take off-road driving to help out. Smooth ride can enhance that mediocre gun handling, and then it really doesn't matter too much because your vehicle turns quickly. Preventive maintenance might help some fires if you aren't somebody who uses an extinguisher. Okay, equipment-wise on this vehicle, I think it's really simple. I'm going to be going with a turbo, vents, and vert stabs on this tank for my main build. However, if you are so inclined, you might even be able to drop the vert stabs out to use something else, like some hardening for those city maps. An aiming device to turn this into a real god sniper, or alternatively, you could take an exhaust to be sneaky to push into positions as well. And if you were to make that kind of a combo build, you would be like an autoloader with 13 degrees of gun depression that almost was cutting close to 40% camo while moving. It'd be crazy. My second build on this vehicle is going to focus for those bushy maps where I want to go full scout. I'm going to be using vents, vision system, exhaust. However, if you don't have the perfect commander and you're not using a premium consumable, then you might want to drop the vents or the exhaust out to use coated optics on this tank. This will make this thing the master of vision. Not only are you literally driving around with standard equipment at 37% camo, you can still get 451 meters view range without coated optics and that vision system. It's awesome. All right, so now field mods on this tank. So first I'm going to take the module durability increase. So if I get ammo racked or my gun's damaged, doesn't really matter. Next, I'm going to be improving the accuracy of this vehicle. Then I'm going to be improving the camo rating of this vehicle. I'll take a vision slot. And the final field mod, this is actually really nice on this tank. You can improve the accuracy by 5% for only losing 3% reload. But remember, that 3% reload doesn't affect your intra-clip, so I would thoroughly recommend that you take it. All that does is lower your damage per minute overall by 44, increase your magazine reload by 0.88, but to be able to have that extra accuracy and to go down to 0.27 accuracy without bounty or bond equipment or an aiming device, oh, it just feels great. But anyway, I think that's quite enough with the gum flapping. Let's get stuck into some gameplay. All right, so first up, we are loading on Westfield, and this is the kind of map where I could do a couple of things. Number one, I could kind of go up north and use this vehicle's 13 degrees of gun depression, but then I wouldn't have the turret armor. Accordingly, I've decided to use my vision build here, and we're going to go and work the south. So immediately, I want you to recognize that this vehicle upslope, it's definitely not great. It's one of the reasons why I want to invest in a turbo in this vehicle on at least one of my builds, because it's the perfect tank for contesting important positions with elevation. Thinking like mines, I want to shoot down on my opponents from the hill. I'm thinking Glacier, I want to try and contest the hill and go and use 13 degrees of gun depression to farm the heavies at will. You know, I'm thinking Tundra, I want to go up on the hill and be able to use that gun depression for the rest of the map. It's the kind of tank that wants to contest those early positions where the elevation matters, but it just doesn't really have the speed to do so safely. And so I think that I might even end up putting a bond turbo on this tank just to give it every little last bit of horsepower that it can to try and make those cheeky plays. However, this is going to be a different kind of gameplay now. This is using that incredible camera rating that I showed in the garage and this lovely gun. Just look at this. Oh my goodness gracious. Look, nearly fully aimed in between its shots, even with a little bit of moving there. Will it be fully aimed in between its shots even without the vert stabs on this tank? It can actually do that. If you're completely stationary, it will be fully aimed with a 3-second intra-clip reload without vert stabs. The aiming time is that good, and the bloom after firing is that good as well. The only awkward thing about this vehicle is because the reload is fairly long, you know, with a base reload of 30 seconds, that you will improve with things like vents and a premium consumable, but you're also going to make it worse if you want to be able to take that 5% extra accuracy on the vehicle with that really nice field mod. I think it's an incredible field mod to use on the vehicle. Then, yeah, it starts to get to be quite a long reload for just 3 shells. But you know what? It doesn't stop me in a Char Future 4, and I don't really feel like it's stopping me too much in a UDES. It is obviously stopping me from being just outrageously overpowered and just completely dominating the games that I play. So, oh yeah, the UDES balanced within that regard. But man, this tank just feels so comfortable with this gun. And for it to be an autoloader as well, it's one of the reasons why I love the Char. And it's interesting because with the Char, you know, it has a 4-second intra-clip reload, so you've got so much more time to aim. This vehicle has that 1 second less intra-clip reload, but the gun handling just feels as if it's Char grade, but better, but it dumps out its rounds faster as well, which can really surprise your opponents. It's not like a Borask, right? It's got the same alpha as the Borask 360, and the Borask is dumping out in 2 seconds. But the Borask doesn't have 13 degrees of gun depression, and the Borask doesn't have this level of penetration, you know? On my standard rounds on this vehicle, 252. On my premium rounds on this vehicle, 284. And while I have jumped up an entire tier, and I don't quite have Borask-like camo, as you're going to see in this game, the camo is not bad at all. So I can't really resist dumping on this TVP out in the open, but I'm actually going to get punished by the Nomad, use my fuel tanks. I'm thinking, can I go up there and tag that Nomad again? But no, don't be greedy, just chill. And this is showing you what Vision System Exhaust is doing right now. We're spotting out that Spatuk, we're damaging him ourselves and also allowing our allies to play. We're spotting out the Nomad, we're getting revenge, we're going up here, not getting spotted by this guard, putting some pressure on him as well, and we're up to 4k combined in the first 4 minutes of this game. And remember, this is a premium tank. So if you're wondering what I was doing there when I was like, reach to the sky, no, I was lowering the hydropneumatic suspension. So in your Swedish tanks, the only way to actually... So what happens is if you aim down, the tank tilts, right? But then if you aim up again, especially with the tank that has elevation like this, then the gun just raises, but it becomes awkward, and then you end up with your butt sticking up in the air. But if you aim the gun like all the way up, then it tilts the vehicle down, and then you can go back to using your natural gun depression again. So consider that if you know that you've just used your hydropneumatic suspension, it doesn't automatically level off, so you need to overcompensate by aiming all the way up to be able to get the rear of your tank back down to a better level. And that will make your armor much better, right? Because if you leave your hull sticking up, then you don't have that 70-degree angle anymore, and AP shells will go into you. Of course, the ones that don't overmatch, if they've got a 106mm caliber gun, But if you lower the back, then you will be able to pull off those ricochets. So it's just something that you have to do. It's very important in the UDES 03, for example, because the UDES 03 has an independent gun to the hydropneumatic suspension as well. So it's something you have to do in the UDES. So here we can see just the spotting capabilities of this tank. You know, when you have enough view range without coated optics, that allows you to invest into something like an exhaust, or to be able to invest into something like vents as well, which further improves the camo of the vehicle. Not by a huge amount, pretty much by about like 0.5% or 1%. But that's still a good chunk of an exhaust to be able to improve your crew skills in that way. And by using that, we're just getting so close to our opponents that, well, they can't see us, but it looks like they did when I moved a little bit there. And it looks like it was actually the pattern seeing me in the backside there. So we take a good couple of taps, but at least we managed to get the guard out of the game. I'm just hoping that somebody's going to help me against this pattern. And so this game, it's looking a little bit bleak right now. We're down by 4,000 hit points. And I've got two decisions that I can make. One is that I can push on and go and try and dig out the Nomad and dig out the artillery. But if I don't find the Nomad and I find the artillery, then the Nomad is going to dump me from above, which isn't going to be great. And also at this stage of the game, I thought that it's more important that I get back and try and help out the TL1 LPC, or alternatively that I just get back to base. So I'm actually going to say thank you to the TL1 LPC there, that they finish off the pattern. They're going to give me a thumbs up, because I really thought that we had a chance for epic. When I'm in one of these kind of tanks on a map like this, you know, I got the camo, I've got the gun depression, I've got the autoloader, I feel I've also got the view range. I've got all of the tools at my disposal where I can outspot my opponents and see them through these bushes and try to make plays where they just can't fight back, right? And that's the dream for a vehicle like this. And the only true downside to a vehicle like this... By the way, I should have fired there. That was a poor shot. I should have just gone for it, especially considering I'm loading gold with 1,460. I should have taken the chances at the T30 there, even if it was a risk that I'd get spotted out in the open. But this tank, I always just feel like I have a chance. It's got all of the statistics that I need to excel on these big, open, bushy maps, and also excel in late-game situations, where the map has opened up a little bit. Tanks like these do so much better the fewer tanks there are on the map. Heavy tanks generally do better the more tanks there are, because they want to just go and get hull down, for example, and punish their opponents that way. Or they don't mind there being 5 tanks in front of them, because they can use their armor to avoid the damage. And oh no, 2 low rolls, leaving the T30 on 18 hit points. Hope that isn't going to come back to haunt me later on in the game. And my word, this TL1 LPC is clawing us back in here right now, as they shut down the SU-130. But as I was saying, that vehicles like this do better in those late game situations where there are fewer tanks, because it's easier to be able to isolate your opponents, and there's less opportunity for getting spotted or like uncertainty, right? Every time you push somewhere, every time you make a play, there's a chance that you're going to get spotted by somebody who may be just sitting in a bush or has changed positions, and you don't have quite enough view range to be able to see them. And oh dear, it looks like the Progetto 46 definitely didn't enjoy that BMW driver on the enemy team, as they shut down the Progetto, and that's 600 hit points that we just lost. Highlight the poor power to weight ratio of this vehicle upslope there. 13, not great. It definitely doesn't feel like a fast medium tank within that regard. But I'm going to swing by to hopefully help out. Looks like the TL1 LPC and the Kampfpanzer, who must be shooting that turtle in unison. And this is where this tank, oh man, it just feels so good. Look at these shots. They just feel so easy, so clean, and set him on fire, but I'm just going to dump the other shell anyway, because I have to reload. And what happens if he just manually uses his fire extinguisher and I look stupid? That wouldn't have been a good play, or especially wouldn't have been a good look in this battle for it being so close. So the TL1 LPC, I'm going to go after this T30 because I was expecting he was going to push me right now. And the TL1 LPC is just holding valiantly up on the hill. And I was thinking like, bud, we can do this. Did I say that earlier? Did I say we can win earlier? I don't know. I was feeling very optimistic in this battle. I was really hungry for this one. And spoilers, this was actually the first game I ever played in the UDES 03. The UDES 3.3, I'm just going to call it the UDES 3.3 from now on. And I could tell immediately, if you can play the Char Future 4, you can play this tank. It feels very similar to a Char Future 4 that just sacrifices a little bit of the firepower to be able to gain a lot of flexibility on the ridge. And oh dear, my T-34, well, the T-34 3 on the enemy team catches out my friend. And I just knew I was absolutely screwed in this scenario. So I was going to try and get as many shots out as I can. I'm trying to bait the Nomad to shoot me right now. Hopefully I'm going to be able to catch the Nomad. T30 above me. Luckily the T30 misses. There's nothing I can do. I got to get rid of the guns out of the game. Now I was thinking, well, maybe I can get the T30 to miss and I can fire one in against the T34-3. It ricochets off his side, and I was hoping I could get behind the building, and just wasn't to be, boys and girls. 7,400 combined in this battle. I think it was unfortunate the TL1 LPC fell back. It was unfortunate they got caught out. But the big misfortune here was that low roll on the T30, which ended up with him managing to deal with the Progetto, and we just didn't have the guns and the hit points at the end of the game. All in all, though, I had fun in this round. I loved the UDES with the way that it felt with its sniping. I loved the UDES with just how that kind of gun felt. And to be able to have such good camera rating and view range to add into the mix, oh, this thing feels lovely. Just don't expect it to actually be able to take any hits. 0 damage blocked in the tier 9 medium tank. And trust me, this thing isn't going to block any damage unless you're incredibly lucky. Okay, so you saw this vehicle, how it can play sneaky. Now I'm going to show you how this vehicle can play when it's being a little bit more aggressive. So while I was testing this vehicle, I went through a few different builds to see what I really liked on the tank. And I really feel like this tank needs a turbo. I tried an experimental turbo on this vehicle, but then I realized that the vehicle's traverse speed is so good and its turret traverse is so good. And its top speed is not bad. I want to improve it a little bit. But its gun handling with this build, with vert stabs and the experimental turbo, oh, it felt amazing. But it was almost overkill. And I feel that experimental turbo on this vehicle just might not actually have the engine power increase that you would want. So I'd probably recommend going for a bounty turbo or a bond turbo instead of the experimental turbo on this tank. But if you absolutely, utterly must have incredible gun handling on an autoloader like this and just keep moving and dumping shells, go for it. Okay, so now what I want to show you is just how lovely the UDES feels with regards to its gun depression, and also how it can feel with a little bit of its brawling. So this Leopard's lost its gunner, so I'm just going to dump. If I take the 420 to do the extra 720 to him, I'll take it. Luckily, he actually misses, hits our track, and that is a casual 1,050 into a tier 9 medium at the beginning. And now it's just about kind of trying to let your opponents think that you're still dangerous, right? Be looking for them, looking for those shots, be hopefully not allowing them over the ridgeline. And we're actually ready to go again. The reload's not too bad. I'm worried about the AMX M451, but I gotta get the shots in right now. Easy shot. God, this gun feels clean. And look at this 13 degrees of gun depression here. When you use that hydropneumatic, oh my lord. And this is an auto-loading medium. Goodness gracious. Like, what kind of tanks usually could be able to sit on that little ridgeline in that nook and be able to get shots over there? Not many, I can tell you. This vehicle has better gun depression when it's using its hydropneumatic suspension than a Kranvang, for goodness sake. I know that the UDES gets, I believe, these kind of gun depression angles. It's a little bit worse than the SW1, but man, it feels decent. And we're ready to go again, so that's okay. This AMX, hopefully my team is going to help me out here against him. Interestingly, we actually ammo rack him once, and he doesn't repair his ammo rack, and okay, buddy, goodbye. that was lucky. Very lucky, to say the least. I thought my death had approached me there, but we handled it. So I'm just asking this Tiger 2 for help against this IS-22 who we crippled earlier. And even with the ammo rack, we bounced the Progetto from above. That Leopard gets some dastardly revenge, but luckily that field mod that we took, that means that our ammo rack is not so vulnerable for the reload when, well, we're going to reload quicker while we're ammo racked is what I'm trying to suggest. I give the Progetto a big thumbs up, and in the first 3 minutes of this game, albeit with an ammo rack, we're up to 4,200 damage. This thing is brawling, and let's go after this Progetto. We're a super dangerous tank. I'm a tier 9 medium. He's a tier 8. We're going to go after him, and oh, yeah. I think the ammo rack went a little bit to my head there, as the enemies finish us off very quickly indeed. So, yeah, what I want to highlight in this game is the gun depression feels fantastic. The reload, it's not too bad for the damage that you can deal. You need a bit of downtime, like 20-25 seconds downtime between your mags, but when it works out, it works out. That intraclip reload, enough to pressure your opponents, it's a full-fledged autoloader within that regard. Sure, it'd be nice if it had 2-second intraclip, or if it had 2.5-second intraclip, but there aren't many tanks like that with 360 alpha, apart from the Borask, right? But also, I wanted to just show that just don't think that this is like a real Swedish tier 9 or tier 10 medium where you can then go and crest the ridge and your turret is going to work. Because apart from one miracle bounce from the Progetto, yeah, it ain't going to happen. So don't get overconfident. Look for those opportunities. Look for those mags. But when you're playing against half-decent players, yeah, don't take too many risks with that turret. All right, so one more round. We're going to be rolling out on Erlenberg this time. And this map, it has okay opportunities for gun depression. It has okay sniping opportunities as well. But I really want to try and come to the conclusion of my feeling with the UDES for the games that I played it. So I was thinking about going across to that bush for the Kampfpanzer. Doesn't quite work out for me, and I end up getting spotted stupidly. You can actually work those shrubs there, and with a tank with good camo like this, you might be able to pull that off. But man, this 13 degrees of gun depression here, it's just hopefully going to work against this TNH. Pop. Well, when I say pop, I'm hoping that he gets Amarak, but that would be a little bit ambitious for the first shell of the game. Looking for the shot, don't quite manage it. Poor shell there. There's a little bit of a hope. But luckily this Patriot's coming across, and yeah, we're going to get some little bit of extra in. ELC dunks me in the side of the turret. I aim at him, he misses me. Look at that gun handling. Man, that vert stabs with the experimental turbo, that 26% reduced dispersion. Ooh, meaty. Now you could do that just with a Bond vert stabs on this tank, and then you could just use a Bond turbo as well, and you'd have the same kind of performance that you see now. Or alternative, you could go with Bond vert stabs and level 3 experimental, and you'd have 33% reduced dispersion. Although, look, I don't think the gun handling on this tank is the problem. So there are other pieces of equipment that you could match towards your playstyle to maybe be more beneficial. But again, I digress. I want to focus to what I really like about this tank and what I don't. So firstly, it doesn't have the I win button gold that the Char has. With the Char, when I got into tier 10 matchups in this tank, yeah, it did feel a little bit awkward. For example, only being able to go through the lower plate of an E5 or an E3 some of the time. Whereas when I play a Char Future 4, I'm going through that every time with 330mm of gold pen. So these APCR rounds, they definitely don't feel nearly as good as the 330 heat that the Char has. It also means that you're less flexible against certain tanks. Imagine, for example, that I'm fighting against the Stridsvagn 1030 in this vehicle. I have to get his side or get his rear. Whereas when I play a Char Future 4, I could literally load gold and whiff shells anywhere on his tank. So that's definitely something to take into account, is that you don't have that I win gold. And so that means that the UDES can feel a little bit frustrating against tier 10 tanks. Another thing that's a little frustrating is for the alpha damage, the intraclip does feel a little bit long compared to some vehicles, but mostly like heavy tanks and tank destroyers. For a medium tank, it definitely still feels like it slaps within that regard. And I think it's balanced, right? It's just, if it was only just a little bit more, this thing would feel mental. Also, the reload on the vehicle, it's a little long, but it's not so long that it destroys the vehicle. The real big problem with this tank is that the armor is a complete miss. And I really did feel with my play session in this tank that I just wish I was playing the Char. Because when I'm playing the Char, I pull off so many miracle bounces. They don't shoot me in the side, and I get tracked, and I get damaged at the same time. I get that ricochet off with the Char. And with that turret armor on the Char, when I'm using the 7.5 degrees of gun depression that tank gets, yeah, it just works. It's got like 200mm of effective armor, and it just works. Didn't mean to block this M3Y here. I'm just trying to get into cover so I can shoot through these bushes. This is actually going to be an unusual miss, although I say an unusual miss, but it's actually just an unlucky ricochet there off the Lorraine 50T. I was hoping that they're going to reverse. In this kind of situation, yeah, I don't like this tank from this regard. It's like, do I fire? Do I not fire? Do I reload? Do I not reload? A little bit of an awkward mag. Whereas with the Char, I feel like because of that intra-clip, I'm always trying to reload to try and just get those shells off. But it actually looks like it's going to pay off for me here as we manage to hopefully find this Cobra. All right, Mr. Cobra, we're going to get you in the side of the turret. Oh, man, that's awkward. Are we going to get the extra one in? Oh, no, STRV. Am I going to go for the reload here, or am I going to try and dump one shell into him? Man, this is the worst kind of like, should I reload, should I not reload kind of situation. Okay, finally I'm going to reload. Man, that was really awkward. And you really don't want to have too many moments like that in a tank like this, because you only have that 1,800 base DPM. You can't use a gun rammer to be able to improve it. So, yeah, I get caught in an awkward scenario against the STRV. Luckily, I have more than enough mobility to get the side, and from one tier 9 Swedish tank to another tier 9 Swedish tank, it if you leave he can't depress the gun if he's outside the siege mode there. And now he's in the siege mode again. He'll be slow again. I'm going to go forwards. Going to reverse. That was a little bit cheeky, I have to admit. We set him on fire and he's ammo-racked. I mean, sorry, bud, you know. Nothing personal, but shows you this thing can brawl. Get a turret, noob. That's what you're meant to shout at tank destroyers, right? And this is just how I feel about the aspects of the tank that I don't enjoy. However, here's all of the things that I do. Firstly, that view range advantage over the Char means that you get an entire extra equipment slot. You don't need to use coated optics on this tank. I mean, if you do want to use coated optics and have hyper view range, that's you and your decision. I feel like the vehicle would be best suited to use a vision system instead of using coated optics if you have a good crew and if you use a premium consumable. But if you don't, yeah, you're probably going to have to end up using a coated optics on this tank. So that 10 meters view range makes all the difference. And to free up that equipment slot means that I could use an experimental turbo, for example. Whereas on my Char Future 4, I can't do that. On my Char, I probably could put like bond vents on. If I put bond vents on, then maybe I could get away without coated optics on most maps. But the UDES doesn't have to worry about that. Even with like a full combat build, like you see here, it has enough with regards to its view range, and that allows you to focus on the other aspects of the tank. I really like the magazine as well on this vehicle. It feels so much better than on the Object, for example, because the Object's got like 4-second intro clip and 320. This thing actually dumps. It actually manages to be an autoloader. It truly feels like an autoloader, whereas the Object at tier 9 just doesn't. And so within that regard, the UDES feels fantastic because autoloaders are fun. Autoloaders feel good, right? At least for the player who's playing them and not for the player who's on the receiving end of the autoloader. Whereas the Object kind of feels, fair enough, it's got an auto reloader, but that tank kind of feels more like it's like not a T-54 and it's not an autoloader. It's somewhere in between, but it's not an enjoyable tank and I'd never want to play that. But this vehicle, on the other hand, I think it's going to be available for just pure cash, I expect. I don't think it's going to be available for gold. I don't think it's going to be in Wargaming's 14th anniversary loot boxes. I don't think there will be 14th anniversary loot boxes. I think it's just going to be a flat out, you buy it for money. So firstly, massive thumbs up to Wargaming for that, for actually putting tier 9 tanks outside of loot boxes and making them available for cash, which gives people an opportunity. That's a really unlucky bounce there on the UDES. That means that I don't really have the hit points anymore. Well, not the hit points. I don't have the firepower anymore to get rid of them. I'm actually going to ram this player to try and keep them tracked, but they actually repaired their track at the moment, and so that means that now, I just whiff all my hit points. But with only 10 seconds left in the game, I'll be honest, I was being greedy. I was trying to get the biggest damage total for my tank review that I possibly could. And what's the point of having hit points at the end of the battle, right? No point. I'm lucky that the G-Saw didn't high roll on me. And again, my turret armor just... It's not a UDES 16 with regards to its turret armor, right? Nevertheless, this was 5,800 combined game. A solid round of World of Tanks. And, yeah. When they just nail your mantlet like that, right, straight in through the front of the thickest part of, well, the thickest part of the armor, it's not great news with this thing's turret. Trust me. But look, do you really care when you're smashing out big combined games? And importantly, you're making big credits and you're making bonds at the same time, as this is a tier 9 premium tank. And that means that considering how close this is to being as good as the Char, at least for me, and in my opinion, I think this is going to be a very good vehicle for people who know how to use gun depression, who know how to use view range mechanics, who know how to make the autoloader count. If you're a good player, you will do very well in this tank. I think there will also be another kind of demographic in the vehicle who will do well, and those are people who can play the Char and like to play it predominantly as a sniper, because remember just how good the gun handling is on this tank. Like, we're talking about incredible gun handling. That .33 accuracy gets way better, considering that you improve the accuracy here, and you improve the accuracy here as well. And suddenly, like, that .31 base, before you get all the bells and whistles, goes down to .27, as I showed you in the garage, without fancy equipment on the tank. Combine that with that 13 degrees of gun depression, and people who just like to play snipers are going to find more positions to snipe in this tank than they would do in a lot of vehicles. And add to that great shell velocity, to make up for the poor damage per minute and good penetration. Not incredible penetration, but good penetration on its standard rounds. Man, I really like this tank. And so this vehicle gets a big thumbs up from me for multiple reasons. Number one, I think that Wargaming aren't going to put it in loot boxes. I think you're just going to go to the premium store. If you like it, you buy it. Brilliant. No gambling to be able to get this tank. Secondly, it's a real fun play style. It's different enough to the Char. It definitely has its nuances. And there's nothing really like this at tier 9. So from that, a big thumbs up from me. Now, how good do I think this vehicle is going to be? Well, that's a tricky one because for me and my play style, this matches it perfectly. I really enjoy this vehicle and I think I'm going to have really good results in this tank. I personally think it's kind of on par with a Char Future 4 kind of level. And when we go and take a look that the Char Future 4 has the second best win ratio difference of any of the tier 9 mediums, and it's actually packing a very respectable win rate of near 50% considering a lot of casual players play this vehicle as well. Yeah, I think this tank is going to be great. I think it'll be one of the better tier 9 premium medium tanks, if not the best tier 9 premium medium tank for a lot of players. However, let me clarify that because of that lack of armor, that I don't think this tank is going to be considered to be overpowered. But then again, you know, the people think the Borask is overpowered and that doesn't have any armor. But the Borask is special because of that 720 damage in 2 seconds at tier 8, let's be honest. Combined with insane camo rating. And while this has very good camo rating, it's definitely not insane like a Borask. So the final word. I think this vehicle will do very well if you know your maps like the back of your hand and you know how to play like a scout as well as also playing like an autoloader. I think you will do incredibly well in this tank while also making great credits and also making bonds at the same time. However, I think that the more casual players are going to struggle with the lower gold pen on this tank and the complete lack of armor and the lower durability means they're going to stay in the game for less time to be able to dump out those big mags like the Char can. But all in all, Wargaming, massive thumbs up for me. I think this is how you should release premium tanks, and I think this is also, I think it's going to be fairly balanced, if not slightly, for me at least, slightly better than balanced, but different enough to get excited about. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this tank review and it was useful. If it was, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know what you think about the UDES 3.3 in the comments down below. Do you think it looks like an incredible tank? Do you think it looks like a mediocre tank? Do you think it looks like a balanced tank? And are you going to jump to get one in Wargaming's 14th anniversary, which starts today? So that's it for me. Hope you enjoyed. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic and hopefully I'll see you soon.